All right, I am excited to be sitting down today with Travis Speegle. Travis is a seasoned veteran of direct response and internet marketing. He started his first online business in 1996, built direct sales teams, and raised venture capital in Silicon Valley through the dot-com boom. Worked on infomercial fitness product offers and scaled sales to over $1 million a week, not a month, that's a week. He has paid traffic campaigns that have profitably generated over 13 million email subscribers. And as an expert on the consumer experience, Travis is world-class at uncovering business stories, processes, or mechanisms that really connect with the end person, whether that end person is a retail consumer or an investor on the other side of a multi-million dollar deal. He lives in Puerto Rico and has surfed almost every day for the past 7 years, all without missing morning coffee or happy hour with his wife. Welcome, Travis.
Thanks, man. I dig the intro. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We met a little less than a year ago, and it was funny because I remember we were hopping on for a 15-minute intro call just to say hi, what's up, get to know each other, and that quickly morphed into a 3 hour conversation. So yeah, it was really great to connect with you originally, and I'm excited to kind of share your experience, knowledge, stories with everyone listening.
Yeah, man, you're a remarkable dude. It's super fun to get to hang out with someone who's kind of coming up and uh, making really cool shit happen today. Where I finally have to recognize that I'm a little bit of an old dog.
I wasn't going to bring it up. I wasn't going to make you feel old, but when you started your first online business, I was 4 years old.
There is that. And it's hard to recognize. That's almost 30 years ago, man.
Yeah.
And it was a much different world. And look at it today. It's like I don't feel like that much has passed, but there's probably, I don't want to use the word wisdom, but there's some stuff in there that's probably piled up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that seems like a good place to start because I remember, reading some of your old posts and you were saying, how you were that kid who was, instead of watching Saturday morning cartoons, you were watching, infomercials and kind of understanding that, maybe not if it wasn't fully conscious at the time, you said, okay, this potential way towards freedom or towards success. So yeah, maybe share a little bit about like kind of what got you started, why you veered towards internet marketing and sort of the journey.
Yeah. Well, you take it back to like that little kid, and I really was fascinated with infomercials because it kind of had like one, they were exciting, and they were new products and they were things that like I knew, you know, it's making a difference in your life. Like it's an exciting way to use something or a novel idea that kind of changes your life. Like even if it's like making, I don't know, whipped cream out of skim milk with the super blender. Uh, that shit was just fun to see. And it seemed like there was so much leverage. There was like, you're showing this to a bunch of people and then a lot of people have to buy it. Right. Um, I remember this one time in particular, I was watching an infomercial for like a Rambo survival knife. And I also wanted to be a ninja when I was a little kid. So all these things were pretty cool. And you used to be able to order stuff COD, where they cash on delivery. So I didn't need a credit card or whatever. So I call and I order. But what I figured out, like I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I have to ask my parents. And so I had to wait. And so I was going to miss the 10 minutes that was like, order in the next 10 minutes and you'll get a second one. And I was probably about 10 years old. I figured they're showing this so often that that's just a mechanism to get people to do something. And so I'm like, I'm pretty sure if I call in 3 hours, they're still going to give it to me. And so when that happened, I recognized like, holy shit, this stuff has so much leverage and there's so much that I'm like, I have to be a part of this. I was just excited about it. And mostly I thought that inventing the product itself was kind of the thing that then you'd sell a shit ton of them. And all of a sudden you'd have all this money and I'd be able to buy everybody cars. But that was kind of where it started. And it just kind of evolved from there. Like it's a lifetime of of love and study and trying to figure out like what those little pieces are that are really highly leveraged because I kind of knew that living life the way that everybody else did would just kind of wasn't going to be my jam.
So what do you think it was about, there's most 10-year-old kids, they might see a product on TV, they really want to buy it, and then, they ask their parents for it and they order it, and that's the end of the story. So what do you think it was about you that you kind of understood the deeper level of what was going on with the sales process?
I don't know. I think it's that my dad was a psychologist. And so he kind of exposed me really, really young to a bunch of like cutting edge psychology and like uh, uh, sports psychology in particular. Um, but probably more so than that, he was also kind of a nonstop entrepreneur. He was never real successful. And so we never had enough, but he was always working on something else. And so from a very young age, I started like looking for things that I could do. And so I was already, like I'd recognized mistletoe in the tree in the trees at one point. And when I saw the magic of that, it's like, oh, I can go sell that. I probably did that when I was about 6 years old. I'm selling mistletoe at the local in front of the local supermarket. Um, so I kind of had this idea that it was possible for even as a kid to make money. And like that seemed like the greatest thing ever because it gave, and it's kind of funny because even as a little kid, like I wasn't so stoked about stuff I could buy for myself, but it was like it gave me something that I could buy and share with other people. Like I could just take care of people, and that felt really good. So I think it was that. It was just kind of like the pursuit of like really of money first, or the idea that I could have something more than maybe what I was supposed to as a young person, and then I just never stop asking why.
Yeah, I love that. Like curiosity,
Yeah.
just to keep pursuing something deeper. Um, cool. So then let's fast forward to 1996. You start your first internet business. What was that all about? And what was it like trying to get something up and going in those early days of the internet?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Um, that was really spurred from in all of this process and sort of growing up. I recognized the struggle of being an entrepreneur, like how hard my dad worked, how little he was around, stuff like that. And I was like, fuck, man, I think life will be easier if I just get a job. And so I did have a job for a while. And during that, I recognized as I was like kind of working my way up the corporate ladder, I recognized that the salespeople made the most money. And so I asked to be like to move into a sales position. And they were like, well, no, you're an ops guy. So we're going to keep you here. And so I quit and I went out and I started learning how to sell. Um, and I got some really shitty sales jobs. And at the same time, there was this like internet thing. Since I'd already always had this like interest and passion for direct response, I'd kind of always been studying it. And now I had some like new sales skills. I started going to like local businesses and helping like offering to put like a direct response spin on their marketing. And then I found with the new online thing, there was this thing called the iMall. Because back then there was America Online and its whole ecosystem. That was the big, like that was the big of the internet because search engines really hadn't taken off. There was like a Netscape browser thing, but it was a dial-up connection. And so you needed some place for people to go to be able to find anything. So there was this thing called the iMall. And there was like a way that you could be a distributor and basically sell stores in the iMall. And so that was the first internet business, was taking people, like taking these local companies and basically taking pictures of their stuff and some descriptions and then uploading it painfully slow. And then and then they would have like an online store. You couldn't do anything with it, but there would be a presence online. So it was pretty archaic, but it was before all the Silicon Valley stuff. So it kind of led to a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I have flashbacks of going on LimeWire and downloading a song and it taking 1 hour to download, "In the Club" by 50 Cent. But then when you got it, you were ready to go.
Oh, dude, and you don't even have any idea. That started at 14.4K dial up. And so it's unfathomably slow. At this point, you can't even imagine how little data was traveling over that phone line in those first days of modems.
That's awesome. Cool. So you mentioned Silicon Valley. So what was kind of the transition there from like getting into the dot-com boom and gold rush there and figuring out opportunities there?
Yeah, it was just I started having conversations with a lot of people, um, and I was still sort of in and around the advertising world, um, and so I started having friends in advertising, and I ended up basically getting an interview or started having interviews. They were just informal conversations, but people were kind of like in that. There was this company that was a travel content provider, and they were just starting to sell online ads, and they were really fascinated that I built sort of a direct response company. Like I was doing this thing on my own, and they thought it was really cool. So that they offered me a pretty decent job, and I was like, oh shit, that's actually pretty good money, and all I have to do is go sell stuff. All right, that's not so bad. And then that was just kind of the first thing. I got into that job, and then you're always around people. Once you get into that world and you're kind of selling in that space, you're around more and more people, and it turned into a like sort of a corporate ladder where you're constantly interviewing, and the way up was kind of like just move on, move on, move on.
Yeah. And then where did that road eventually lead in terms of, culminating in, a final effort in that either the dot-com boom era or, when you decided to split off and do something different?
Yeah, um, it was where I ended up after several companies. I worked with WorldCom for a while. I worked with an ad supported ISP. Um, I worked with another big tech publisher for a while, and then I ended up at this company called ComTouch, which was an infrastructure email provider. And basically, what they were doing was they were branding web-based email. And so even though they were like their technology was the infrastructure that built like that Hotmail sat on top of and that sort of thing. So we started using email or offering email as a brand and a marketing tool back then, but from a platform perspective. So you'd build your own platform. And so I started selling that and then built a sales team with them. Uh, that was early on, that was the dot-com boom. Like we took that company from startup to $1 billion valuation, which meant something back then. And kind of played the Silicon Valley game. I mean, things looked really good. Um, you kind of were in on deals that were happening all over the place. I was working really, really hard, but making a ton of money, and then doubling down on everything. Like I wasn't living high on the hog at all, because I'm like, I am going to be able to check out before I'm 30, and I'm going to hit the number. And so I just had a number, and I was chasing it with everything, leverage all in. And then I don't know, I guess it was about 2002 when everything came crashing down. I just chased it down, man, because as good as I was at selling stuff and at building story, I was just as bad of an investor. Because, man, if I like it at 50, I love it at 25. And then at 12, shit, that's a great deal. So it was yeah, I ran that all the way down until the next year. I ended up having to borrow money to pay my taxes. And I was well into numbers that I could have retired on. So there was that.
What do you think that you learned from that experience, like about yourself, about, your path in life?
Um, well, probably the biggest thing is that putting all your effort into work and just doubling down on the future was probably not the best approach. It was really a hard look at myself because everything went into just, I want I want that checkout. I want, and so kind of willing to do a lot more to get it. And I don't know if I loved who I was at that time. I felt like I was having fun, but I really wasn't. Like I gave up everything to get there. Like I was really, really driven. I was crazy serious. And so I always joked that, I just turned 50, but if you met me at 25 or 27, I was way older. Um, and that's kind of I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I learned. And then it's another 10 years past there of trying things on to kind of discover who you are and what fits and what feels good. Because life is what, like the way you live is the most important thing. The relationships that you have, the relationships you keep, those things are far more important than the numbers. And the numbers always end up being a byproduct of that. So I kind of learned that first experience, I wasn't sure at that point, because at that point it was just like, well, maybe I should just try something that I actually care more about rather than just because I didn't give a shit about tech, dude. I didn't grow up thinking I want computers. I never had a computer until I started my business. I went through college without a computer at all. And I bought it specifically for, okay, I'm going to figure out how to do this because I think there will be leverage in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I think there's a lot of, it seems to me that there's a big impression of what it means to be an entrepreneur or to, you know, start something. There's like a huge association with the Silicon Valley in the United States, like they think that, it's all about raising money from investors. And then and I think Shark Tank plays into that a little bit, when you
Sure.
need this investor money and go explode it. So knowing that, you realized it's not something you were passionate about and you kind of moved more in towards the internet marketing world. Um, talk to me a little bit about that, like that switch over into, the wild west of online marketing.
Yeah, that was it's kind of an interesting, it's an, what do I want to call it? Just like an interesting time and transition, because really, like I went from there sort of back into things that were more important to me, like fitness and health, stuff that I'd studied early on and was pretty stoked on. And that's how I ended up working with the guy that invented Bowflex, and we started working on some infomercial products together and things like that, taking direct response and working that in with like health and fitness. And then that sort of evolved into some consulting and a physical gym location and some stuff that just more business that I did myself. Um, and at that point, of course, we're starting to leverage more technology. And I built my company, or my physical gyms, I built with all direct mail and direct sales. So it was all the same like strategies, because it was before there was a ton of good internet marketing. This is like the very beginning of Google search, And so I hadn't figured any of that stuff out yet. And it wasn't until after I sort of checked out on that business, because that built back up a really nice, successful life. Like we were right into, I had a country club, nice cars, nicest house on the block, all of that kind of stuff, and a really shitty life. It was like, not that I hated my business, I just didn't like my life. I didn't build it the way I didn't build it the way I wanted, and I was working really. So I sort of checked out on that and went on a like binge of trying to figure out how I could live with less. Like I want to figure out how to be happy on like $3,000 a month. That was my goal then. And that was coming off of like basically monthly overhead that was about probably closer to $15,000 a month. And so I gave all of that up. I just let it all go. And so that kind of led me down that path of like, I'm finally searching for who I want to be. And during that time, I'm like, well, how am I going to fund this to keep it going? And that led me down the path of like online marketing, because there should be some freedom in that. And I have all these other skills, like this should translate, right? And it kind of does, it kind of did. Like, so I tried a lot of things, and that's where even where I started, I ran the very first, as soon as Facebook had ads, I ran ads on Facebook. And I had a super interest in advertising and direct response, but I was really trying a lot of stuff, because that was like, it was soulless to an extent, because all I was trying to do was make money so that I could do something else. So I was chasing all the shiny objects, man. Like I chased every shiny object, and this is with like a pretty solid skill set and a long history of being good at business. I was successful with pretty much every single one of those things, a little tiny bit. Like I would get just enough to have hope and to say, oh, okay, I can do this. And then it would break. And then I would chase the next shiny object, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Until eventually, because I didn't realize this whole time, it's just like draining me dry. So basically my boot camp into online marketing is, I did all of the things and I went completely broke. I'm not kidding. Like I legitimately ended up losing the little apartment that we had, moving into my car with my wife now. And we were, dude, straight up homeless. Ended up living in a pool house. And that's where I like kind of figured it out. It's like, oh, okay, that's probably not that wasn't exactly the right path.
Whatever we were doing just before this probably was not the way.
This was not exactly what I should have done. So it was like, I've got this triple run. But that's where it came. That's where it came from. Is like I had all of this experience, and then I just had to figure out, how do you put those pieces together so that you can turn it into something that actually will afford the life that you really want.
Yeah.
And so there's a long-winded way to sort of answer your question.
No, yeah, the question was pretty wide open. So I know that story about you meeting your wife, and then you guys basically from that point went traveling like pretty
Yeah.
soon after meeting each other, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm most proud of. Like, and the things that, like, if I look at an inflection point, like that's it. And that was like I said, I wanted to figure out how I could live with less. And my goal was, I really just wanted to go surfing. So I was just going to move to Mexico. I'd moved out of my house. I'd I'd sort of broken up my business into pieces so that I could just get it out. I basically let everything go, and then lost all of the rest of it. Like I let my whole life go. And yeah, and then right before I was ready to leave, like we met, and was like, wow. She called me one day and she's like, man, I know you're leaving. She's like, but I kind of like you, and this is cool. And I was like, well, you could come with me. And I didn't think anybody was that crazy, but she did. And so it was pretty cool. So yeah, we got in the car, and like we'd been dating for 3 weeks, got in a car and drove to Mexico, and lasted for, I don't know, 3 months or so before I'm like, I need to bring her back to the States for just some like, just like sort of a normal life. But man, yeah, that's 15 years ago.
Yeah,
It's
that's awesome that you have that experience together.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. And you end up knowing a lot about each other, and you get to go through all of the learning with each other, including going completely homeless, and then figuring it out and turning that around. At one point, we turned that around in like 6 months from having absolutely nothing, like the worst, darkest day ever, to 6 months later, like living on the beach, surfing every day, nice house. It's amazing how fast stuff moves when you just line everything up. the way that you're meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes me think like, you kind of recognize that you were not happy with this sort of lifestyle that you had where you had the country club thing and you were not, so when you decided to kind of leave that all behind, was the emotion more excitement? Was it nervousness? Was it a combination? Because, at that point you weren't sure exactly how the path was going to look moving forward, right?
I don't, dude, I have to be like, this feels a little too transparent, but I'm going to tell you that like the 100% truth. I don't know if I ever would have done it. Um, I have to, I kind of have to thank my ex-wife for this because I think she recognized better than I did that my life was never going to be what I wanted it to be. And she just left. She said, "This is enough, dude. I'm out." And like, it felt like it just knocked the legs out from under me, but it also gave me like the freedom to just like, well, now I can start from nothing and
Yeah.
I can be whoever I want to be. I can do whatever I want to do. And so that was probably the big thing, man. I'd love to say that I had some like revelation and I was super smart and I was like, I had the guts to do this. It's like, nah, the reality is I just rolled with it. And I'm like, how can I take this and just be positive? Because that's the one thing, like in all of adversity up to that point, it's like I always wanted to look at it and I'm like, how can I not be angry? Because I figured I figured anger was always a veil for something else. And in that situation, I was like, why is this happening? Or how can I look at this and how does this happen for me? Like, what's the possibility from this? And that's what came out of it. And so it really, like, as much as I'd like it to be all like romantic and cool, it really is just like, we got nothing else to do, man. Like, you might want to go try living it up, like just figuring out what you want your life to look like. And um, that's that's really all there is to it. It's like I'm gonna go try something entirely different.
Yeah. That seems to be something that's coming up a lot in my conversations and just kind of my sphere of awareness is how much pain is the instigator in a lot of change. And I wish it wasn't like that sometimes. Why can't we just change from nothing, But yeah, no, did you? Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because it is like, and even going through this journey and through the process, um, I started paying more attention to like the great American success stories and all of the things. And I'm like, I don't know that I'd had enough struggle because I was good from the beginning. Like I just happened to, like, maybe I was blessed with genetics, maybe I had a really good work ethic, but somehow like most of the stuff I did kind of worked, except for the investment thing. And I only carried so much responsibility for that because I was a stupid kid. Um, but I still felt like you needed that rock bottom moment. It's almost like I created it for myself, and I definitely ended up with it. Um, and I don't think you need to have that. I think you can definitely learn those things from other people. But it is something that where the biggest change happens. Something remarkable will always happen when you have no other way to go but up. And you have no place to go but through. If you're going to keep going, if you're going to survive, you have to keep moving. And that uh, that does seem a common thread. And because it's super powerful, it's a catalyst for change. Like when the pain becomes so great that you have to do something to get out of it, you'll do a lot more than you ever would to like chase your dream.
Yeah. So you mentioned that, you're looking for a way to for the positive and looking how to see how it could be something that works for you and not against you. What do you think it was about yourself that, there's a lot of people that they'll wallow in that for a long time, sometimes years, sometimes a decade or more. What do you think it was that made you like be able to do a relatively quick turnaround and kind of see it in a positive light?
I think a lot of it has to do with just conditioning. I spent so much time working on that. Like that was something I developed in myself. I mean, one of my big dreams as a kid was to be a motivational speaker, because there were these guys, old athletes and stuff, and they would, like, the way that they could inspire a crowd to take action or to do something different or to see the world differently. Like, I love that stuff. So I've been studying that from forever. And then when Anthony Robbins like just started, and the very first like personal power tapes that he sold on infomercial, of course, um, I had those. I listened to them over and over and over, in addition to like a bunch of other stuff that I had. So I mean, I gets a lot of credit. It was stuff that I was already exposed to. Like NLP and stuff wasn't new to me, even back then in the early 90s. So I lived that way. Like I was constantly looking for the bright side and seeing like infinite possibilities. And I tried to look at the world and influence people around me that way. I mean, to this day, like even early on, I don't know but I had this idea, basically like my life's mission was just to live an awesome life. Like I just wanted to go live an awesome life. And if I did that, I knew that I'd be able to help people. And so I always wanted to help other people live like a more awesome life. I don't know that I really felt like I had made it well enough to teach that stuff, but I'd always kind of tried to share that with people around me. And so I was always like sort of, I don't want to say ridiculously positive, but I was always, I always had a generally more positive outlook.
Yeah. Something that resonated with me there, and I know is kind of connected to the way that you do business and look at the world, is kind of your others first approach. And I remember, recently we were talking, I was trying to figure out like what's your secret sauce of the way that you've been able to generate so much success, from the internet marketing world and connecting with so many people, through email, through all the different ways that you connect with a consumer. And um, I think one of the things that you're really good at, right, is being able to, yeah, make that connection with someone and treat them and remember, because in internet marketing, it's easy to forget. Oh, I click send on an email, and it's just you kind of see it as like black and white X's and O's, but you forget that there's another real person on the other side of that receiving it that deserves your respect, your effort, all those things. Um, where do you think that comes from, where you approach things in a very human way?
It really is that idea, the idea that you can give your way out of any situation, uh, the idea that real relationships sort of beat everything, and that's the most valuable thing, sort of in the world, and then recognizing that there's really a lot of leverage in the internet for creating relationship, but it's different than people typically see it, and it's different than the way we were sort of hardwired to create relationship. So we often don't think of what is the person's experience on the other side of that. Some of it certainly comes from having some years of face-to-face sales experience and things like that. But more often than not, it's that I just, I legitimately want to help people just improve their life a little bit. Like I always wanted people just to be, I wanted your life to be just a little bit better just because you knew me. I don't want anything from people. And it's not to say that I don't put a high importance on like getting results and making money and things like that. That's definitely true. But everything is like makes me better because I know I'm going to be better to help other people too. And it's just genuine. Like the biggest thing, and probably the thing that makes all of that work, is being more who I am. And inherently you're going to make things better for other people, because I don't know, I guess that's inspiring in some ways, to be around someone who's honest.
Yeah, that
And
authenticity.
Yeah, and it's fucking hard to be, it's really hard to be honest with yourself about who you are and what you want and where you're coming from. And most people lie. Um, I often say about imposter syndrome, like the problem with imposter syndrome is it's because you're lying. And like nine times out of 10, there's something that you're just not saying. And the reason that all of this stuff works that I do is that I just encourage people to say what they want to say. And more often than not, I just say what I want to say. And I haven't always been good at that, dude. That's scary. That's threatening. Like that is, people may not like you, but if you like you, then that doesn't fucking matter. So I don't know. I'm about to go on a rant about building yourself into the person you actually want to be. And that's going to change everything. That makes all the online marketing work. That makes everything else work because you're trying to do things that aren't you. And when that's true, then, then you're going to struggle.
So you mentioned that, that it hasn't always been like that for you. If someone's watching this and they're like, man, I just want to be more myself too in my business or in my, in my life, what do you think are some, I mean, of course you don't know the person, but what are some general tips you think that they should keep in mind?
Uh, it's the hardest way. Like, I'll tell you what, like look in the mirror all the time. And I'm talking like literally and metaphorically. Like you really have to like pay attention to yourself and be honest. It's you can tell yourself stories. You can tell other people stories about yourself all day long. And I'm good at that. Like I came up young. And so I was always I was ahead of like grade in school. And so always like I was lying about my age. Not a big thing. It's not changing anyone else's life, but it was dishonest. And it was something that I would say just to fit in. And all of us have shit like that. Like whether it's that blatant or it's just little things, like something I know about myself, but I'm telling you something different. I'm making up a story. I'm telling you something that's not true. Like I can't get away from that. And so looking in the mirror and just understanding that and paying attention to it, even if you don't, like, even if there are things, there's skeletons you don't want to tell somebody, it's okay. You don't have to tell people. You just have to be honest. You have to know that about yourself because that's where the imposter lives. Like you're the one who knows. And so it's probably the hardest work you can ever do in your life is just that, is to understand and just be like 100% transparent with yourself. And then beyond that, I think the next thing that really starts to bring those things into a line is just massive gratitude. Just live in a place where you're grateful for the things that you have and like that are around you and the little things. Man, we are all like so incredibly blessed to have, I mean, any of this, like the fact that we can do this, dude, this is science fiction from when I was a kid. Like every day I'm like, this is freaking amazing, man. I couldn't believe this would ever be real. Um, and so just every little thing around you, be grateful for where you are today and then look forward to the future with like excitement and anything's possible. But it's, yeah, dude, it's really the hard part's looking at yourself though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before you have some of these realizations, it's always everyone else's problem. It's not me. I'm not the problem. It's hard to look in that mirror.
Yeah.
Um, but
100%
yeah,
responsibility, man. If you can
yeah,
take responsibility for your life, like 100%, everything that happens around you, to you, it all is, if you can own responsibility for that, like you can become the person that you want to be. Like, I don't believe there's anybody in the world that can not do anything if they're willing to take all of the responsibility.
yeah, yeah. That's really important. Um, yeah, what you said too about appreciating the small things. I resonated with that. Especially like, how you've talked about. You enjoy that morning coffee with your wife, or you enjoy being out on the water. Every day, or I'll catch myself being like just staring at the bathroom sink, like, wow, this water will just come out when I turn this faucet. And having the gratitude for those small things seems to be really important, because you can forget like how much, we were joking like, the autopilot. thing just came online for everyone with Teslas in the United States, and
Yeah.
and like, the first, hour, it's like, oh my God, this car is driving me from point A to point B, and I don't have to do anything. And then the next hour, you're like, oh, this stupid autopilot didn't even see this, thing in the street, and you're like instantly, the hedonic adaptation to something.
It's
It's
so fast these days,
yeah,
man. You
yeah,
can't do it.
yeah.
Um, that's actually one of my practices. I mean, we do this, we've done daily gratitude at happy hour every day for years. But one of the times that I have just by myself, like the only journal or any like spiritual stuff that I keep is every morning I have a journal next to my bed. I wake up and I write basically a full page of gratitude. And it's nothing more complicated than I am grateful for all of these things. And of course, every morning it starts, I'm grateful with my gratitude for my beautiful wife, because I think that's probably the most important thing. Most important thing. And it is the biggest win. Like that 100% is the biggest win. I'd take that over all of the uh, monetary success or anything else.
Yeah, that's a good segue into that topic because I know relationships are super important to you and something you're very passionate about. Um, what sort of insights do you have there, in terms of, um, that being the way that you approach life and seeing where it goes wrong for other people when they don't?
Well, I like to simplify everything down to like the absolute lowest common denominators and always keep the most important thing the most important thing. And so just like business, I think the most important thing in life is relationships. And and I think about that sort of like concentric circles. Like there's a relationship that you have with yourself. That's the hardest one to get straight. And that relationship with yourself or with God or your spirituality, however that works for you. But that's a relationship that involves no other person. That one's primary. Take care of that. And then that next relationship is the primary relationship above all else. And that's the one that you choose. And so to me, that's my wife. And so nothing comes between that. That's the most important thing. And then the layers, like then you build the layers around that. Um, Kids, family, acquaintance, however that works. Um, but it really is just, to me, it's focus. And when the most important thing is the most important thing and you keep it that way, it's a lot easier. That's exactly the way I approach business too, is like, where can I boil this down to the lowest common denominator so I can just say there's just this one thing, and everything else builds around that. There's a lot of little things that come with a successful relationship, and it's not easy. But just like I was talking about earlier, that relationship with yourself is so hard. Like, be willing to do the work. And then with your primary relationship with my wife, like I've been willing to do the work, and some of it's been painful and some of it would have been easy to like just tap out on, but you don't do it because the most important thing is the most important thing. And so you go through and you figure it out. And it's like, and then you end up here 15 years later and it feels pretty damn good.
Yeah, I love that. Um, just to switch gears a little bit, I know that, you've got some exciting things going on, and you've had such a incredible journey, and you also have a lot of exciting things in front of you as well. Maybe, people are watching this and they're kind of interested in potentially working with you. What are some of the opportunities you're looking for now, and how are you, collaborating with people, moving forward?
And there's so much cool stuff going on lately. A lot of it has to do around, I mean, people look at me and they look at like this track record that we've had over the last 10 or 12 years with online marketing, most specifically with advertising, um, and advertising brand and building big lists, like big hungry audiences of people. And I am pretty excited about that because I think online marketing is a big, nasty, sort of, I don't know, just machine on its own, or a world or community. And the right thing to like, doing the right thing is always the right thing, and it's usually the most successful. But too many people are teaching you to do things that are more difficult and self-serving. So I love that part of it. I love that I've been able to lately teach more people some of our ideas and how to simplify stuff into building their own audience and building an audience quickly using tools and leverage of being more genuinely you and providing real value to people in a simple way. So I love, like, that's where I'm at now, is I'm like, we're just simplifying everything we possibly can and then trying to help as many people do the simple things that they don't think are even possible, because you're being sold the complications. Like I spend all of my time on creating a message or creating an offer or creating a funnel or this or that, when the reality is I didn't do the very first step, which is I have to figure out what I want in my life. And I need to build a hungry crowd. Like, you're never going to sell anything to people that don't need anything. And there's a whole bunch of people out there that will sell you a whole bunch of bullshit about how you can sell stuff just because you want to sell it.
Sell me this pen.
Dude, I used to do that in interviews all the time. And I remember I do actually remember the first interview that somebody asked me to do that. And she didn't even, but by the end of it, she had forgotten that we were in role play. And when I just said, how would you like to pay for that? Then it like clicked her back in. And she's like, what? But it was just having a conversation like this. That's probably the best thing that I ever teach anybody is to stop selling and to start helping people buy. And so in terms of working with me, the best, like, honestly, is like, I've been really excited to teach people how to build a list or an audience that they can control and they can have leverage in, and then offer really good stuff. It's a really good foundation for building a better life or a better business by just being able to control your crowd and control an audience. So I dig that. I do some consulting. I always looking for like super awesome people that are doing really great things that may just have a hiccup or two. We can usually simplify things to help. And a little bit like what you're doing too, though, I'm always looking for different opportunities because I love business. At this point, I really, really love like small business service providers, people that have real companies that provide real services to people. I'm anxious to help as many of those kind of Main Street businesses as possible, because I really don't, like, the whole world is never going online. And I love the opportunity that we have in this country to just become whoever you want and to do things that are meaningful or good for you or good for the people around you. And so, like, I'm kind of stoked to help. I know it's a roundabout way. I'm not a guy with like a menu of services. I'm more of a guy that's like, I want to do stuff that's really fun. I want to help awesome people have an awesome life and then just spread stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the way that you approach things is really cool. And it's almost like the business itself is sort of secondary to someone that resonates with how you approach things.
Yeah, that's the way most of my partnerships have worked. That's been most successful for me. And I mean, we've in those types of arrangements, I mean, we've scaled marketing campaigns to $50,000-$60,000 a day in profitable ad spend. We've done and taken companies from basically no direct response leverage to now, 8-figure businesses that are looking for exits. It's and then the flip side of that is it's almost no different than the guy that's trying to escape his 9-to-5 job or make a couple extra $1,000 doing something he really likes to do. And I enjoy really good people in all of those things equally. So yeah, it's totally secondary to the things that are fun. And all of this was built around the idea of I wanted to build the best life for myself. And I know by doing that, then I'll find a way to resonate that with other people and it'll make a difference.
Yeah, that might be a good place to kind of wrap up is I think a lot of people may see your life as like a dream lifestyle, just wake up every day, go surfing, kind of work when you want to, island life, Um, you know, um, what suggestions do you have for people that want to kind of put lifestyle, put relationships, put those primary things first, and then have the business support it versus the other way around?
Um, the first thing is have the guts to do the work, because the hardest part is not the work part. It's not the business part isn't the hard part. The hard part is defining like very clearly who you are, what you want, and going after that. And then once you decide what you want, just start framing the things that you already do around that. Like, how does that fit? A big way that I got here, because my life is a dream life at this point. I 100%, like, I am super grateful. Like, I built this and I'm proud of it. It's not, like, I can't afford to go buy a Lambo, and I don't have the biggest house on the island or anything like that. But dude, it's everything that I wanted. And so I'm stoked on that. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And if you're going to walk away with one thing, it's just decide exactly what you want and then start defining how it's possible. Just the idea of what would it take for that to happen? When I asked myself the question, when I started framing this, and I'm like, well, I really want to be like, if I could do anything and money was no object, I want to be a professional surfer. And I started looking at like, what does that actually look like? What does that mean? Well, it means that I'd be super fit. I'd surf all the time. I'd travel, like I'd be in beautiful destinations. My wife would probably like me because I'd seem kind of cool. I'd be healthy and fit all the time. I would, and there's a constant challenge. Like, you'd always have something going on. And then you start asking yourself, what would it take? What would have to happen in order for that to be true? And the reality, looking at that from the reality of what a professional surfer life is like, they only get paid in a few ways. They get paid for either like winning contests, which whenever I started this, there was no way I was ever going to win a surf contest. Or they get paid, they get paid to get their pictures taken because they surf so well. Also, probably not going to do that. Or you have to do some things for your sponsors. And I'm like, oh, well, they probably don't, like, it's probably not the ideal. It's not surfing, but you have some obligations and you do that, and that supports your surfing. And so as I thought about that, I'm like, I kind of started reframing everything I did as being sponsorship for me going surfing. And I started telling that story. And so when you look at it from the perspective of what would have to happen, I'm like, well, what would have to happen for me to get sponsored? Well, what are the things that I can do that someone would pay me for? Now that's a sponsor. And you answer that question, then you can start to build things. And that's where it all comes from. So there's my advice. If you want to build a life like this, be very clear, define what you want, and then ask yourself, what would have to happen in order for that to be true? And then just build what you're currently doing, like from a place of gratitude. Look at what you're already doing and how do those things fit together? And then start right now. Just build a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. Before you know it, you've got it all.
I love that. Yeah, it's like your clients and your partners, they're unknowing sponsors of your surf career.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I started doing this, like, that was the story that I told. Like, and so a lot of my best, like my longest term partners and some of my best friends at this point, that's how our relationship started, is I just told them, I'm like, hey man, this is the deal. Like, this is where I'm going. This is who I am. And that's back to that, like, being really genuine is like, what did I want to say? Well, I want to say, hey, dude, I need a sponsor for me to go surfing. And so when somebody wants me to run Facebook ads for them, I'm like, well, this is how it works. Surfing comes first. This is what I'm going to do. And these are the commitments that I'll make to you. Um, and we'll hit all of these milestones. And people would either say, that's total horseshit. And I was like, cool, you're not the right person for me. Or they'd be like, dude, I really love that story. That's a great perspective. And he's like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. It's like, actually, I want to do that. And so it like attracted more business by telling people that you would think something that you think would be repellent, but it never was. So yeah, they're all knowing sponsors in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Well, and what, if it was a repellent in that case, it was a good thing
Yeah, it was
because
great.
you're kind of pushing away the wrong people or the right people.
Yeah. And so if you like, if you look at our list building program, there's a lot of that about lifestyle as well. And so, probably if you don't like me, you're not going to love that. But, but it works.
Yeah.
Um,
Something else I love about what you said is to how deep you went on the concept of, you know, a surfing lifestyle. Because you could say like, okay, I want to surf every day, but you don't go deeper into, okay, what also needs to be in my life in order for me to do that. So you bring in the fitness aspect, you bring in the location aspect, and kind of understanding that, like, it makes me think of like the Tim Ferriss, like, what's the one big domino to push over? It's like, well, if I'm surfing every day, then all these other things need to be true. Or if, someone's watching this and they're saying, I'm whatever they want to do. I'm riding horses every day. I'm living in New York City or whatever. It's like, what else has to be true around that North Star?
exactly. And that's even looking forward today. Like I have one thing that I look forward to, and it's like, if that happened, like for that to happen, all of the other things that I want in life have to be true. So then I don't have to think about everything. One of the things, I know we're getting long-winded, I apologize, but the thing that, when you were just saying that, the thing that sort of popped up for me was, it was always really hard for me to do that like perfect day exercise. Like, what's that perfect day look like? And there are certain elements that I know that I always want in life, but the perfect day exercise is really hard for me. And so that was a different way to look at it, was like,
And
what's
if
the one thing I
someone's
propose?
not familiar with that, that's basically like, just imagine what is your perfect day, that, what are you doing when you wake up, when you're at breakfast, and go all the way to the end, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and the reason it's so challenging for me is I can't imagine one perfect day. I can imagine elements that would be in a perfect day, but especially when you live like from the sort of extreme gratitude, it's like, well, I have lots of perfect days. And there are lots of things that could be part of a perfect day, but to have that like one big thing that's like, okay, this is the thing I always wanted to do that I was afraid to tell anybody I wanted to do. And then what has to happen to get there? And then all of those things back down it those things have to be true. Like your life will be this way. And it's a great, dude, that was a great like thing to pull out. Like, I think that's really poignant. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, Anything else that we didn't cover today, or that something that came up for you earlier from the conversation that you wanted to cover or let people know about?
No, man, I'm stoked to be in having this conversation with you because this is fun, man. You're letting me talk about stuff that's really meaningful, and I love that. Most of the time, we'll get off on talking about just building a list or direct response or like just like the ins and outs of that. And all of those are like, all of those things are tactics. But everything we just talked about today is like foundational strategy. And if you get this stuff right, then everything you build on top of it is just fucking piece of cake. Like the easy part is all that stuff. You can outsource most of that stuff, but you can't outsource this stuff.
Yeah, that's really important. Like you said, it's the foundation, it's like you can implement all these tactics or strategies, but if you're not building from that strong foundation, it's going to crumble. It's um, makes me think of that Bible verse. I don't remember exactly how it goes, but it's basically like, you know, a city built without God, will crumble, right? It's like if you don't have that centeredness, that um, you can build anything you want, but if it's not, in alignment with you and your identity and your purpose, it's not going to last long.
It'll crumble. And I mean, dude, I'm living proof of that. Like I have 3 major falls from like what would be considered normal success and like big crashes. And it's because it wasn't built on the right foundation. I don't have any fear that there will ever be anything like that. Because this is just living exactly who I am, saying what I want to say, being who I want to be.
Yeah, love it. Where can people reach you?
TravisSpeegle.com is a good place to get me. I'm not a super active social media guy. I am on the socials, but if you find me on the X or the Facebook, I'm around. But hit me on email. I like that the best. And you can find that at TravisSpeegle.com as well.
Cool. And Spiegel is Speegle. So
Is
Travis Travis Spiegel at .com, right?
That is me, man.
Yeah,
All
cool.
day, every day.
Well, man, thanks again for coming on. It was a great conversation as usual. And yeah, hopefully some people reach out to you and looking forward to our next conversation already.
Likewise, man. Thanks, brother.
Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Be well.